If rights can be voted away, they were never rights at all. Locke tells you what rights are, and Montesquieu tells you how to keep power from crushing them. William Blackstone shows you the guardrails, law, procedure, and limits that make liberty real in everyday life. And Burke warns what happens when people rip those guardrails out and call the wreckage progress. Our story begins in England, decades before the Declaration, inside a legal system most people couldn't explain. Because before America could build a republic, it had to inherit a vocabulary for freedom. That vocabulary was the common law, centuries of precedent meant to restrain rulers with general rules. Blackstone didn't invent the tradition. He made it readable. He took a sprawling maze of cases and customs and turned it into a map. The man who turned a maze into a map. William Blackstone was born in London in the 1720s, in a Britain growing wealthier and more politically self-aware. Power had been contested and checked, but authority still had a habit of reaching for one more inch, especially in moments of fear. Blackstone studied at Oxford, where he learned to think in systems, not just slogans. Then he stepped into the legal world, where the rules that governed everyday life were anything but straightforward. English law was scattered across court reports, old statutes, and professional custom, powerful but hard to see as a single whole. To insiders, that patchwork was tradition. To everyone else, it looked like a closed guild with secret handshakes. And when the law becomes a priesthood, liberty becomes a rumor. Blackstone started giving lectures that treated English law as a coherent subject, not an apprenticeship mystery. He helped bring legal study into the open, into universities, into the realm of public understanding. Those lectures grew into his great work, the Commentaries on the Laws of England, published in the mid-1760s and onward. They weren't court transcripts or partisan pamphlets. They were explanation, definitions, organizing principles, and a structure you could actually follow. He organized the system into big, readable categories: the rights of persons, the rights of property, private wrongs, and public wrongs. That sounds academic until you realize the point. He was making the state's rule book legible to the people who had to live under it. Readable law is limited law because it's harder to hide abuse behind fog, technicality, and selective enforcement. Blackstone's tone stayed calm, no revolutionary fire, just a steady insistence that law is a public inheritance, not a private weapon. Law above power, process above passion. Blackstone starts with a claim that changes the whole relationship between citizens and rulers. There is a moral order, natural law, higher than any statute passed in fear or rage. Human law earns legitimacy when it aligns with that higher standard, and it loses moral authority when it openly contradicts it. You've heard this thread from Cicero and Aquinas. Blackstone braids it into legal life and courtroom reality. He frames rights as boundaries government must respect, not favors government may grant. He emphasizes three core protections: personal security, personal liberty, and private property. Personal security means the state can't treat your body as public property. Personal liberty means you can't be seized, confined, or punished without lawful cause. Private property means your independence can't be destroyed by arbitrary taking, targeted harassment, or coercion disguised as policy. These aren't warm sentiments. They are constraints on power, rails that keep authority from sliding into force. Blackstone even captured the spirit of due process in a simple idea. It's better for guilty people to slip through than for the innocent to be crushed by the machine. That's not softness. That's an understanding that once the state normalizes shortcuts, everyone becomes vulnerable. Montesquieu gave the blueprint: separate powers, check ambition with ambition. Blackstone shows the daily mechanics that make the blueprint work. Warrants matter because the government shouldn't search first and justify later. Trials matter because accusations aren't verdicts, and procedure is the difference between justice and revenge. Liberty doesn't only die under tyrants. It dies when officials can improvise, when the process is vague, and the citizen has no predictable defense. Blackstone is relentless about due process because procedure is where the strong quietly cheat the weak, one special case at a time. When rules are clear, power has to explain itself. When rules are murky, power can always say, "Trust us." And trust us is how free people become subjects. The rule of law means the powerful are bound by the same rules as the powerless. It means enforcement must be justified, not merely desired. It means punishment must be lawful, not merely popular. Predictability is not boredom. Predictability is freedom, because it lets ordinary people plan a life without begging permission. The Bridge to America, from inherited rights to written limits. Now cross the Atlantic to the American colonies, where tensions rose and trust in Britain began to crack. The colonists weren't arguing that rights were new. They were arguing that rights were old, ancient, inherited, and being violated. They needed more than outrage. They needed language, legitimacy, and a shared standard to point to. Blackstone gave them that standard, a vocabulary for what rights are, why they matter, and how law is supposed to restrain power. His commentaries became widely read among colonial lawyers and leaders because they answered a practical question. If we claim liberty, what exactly are we claiming, and by what authority? Blackstone's answer was, by the logic of an inherited legal tradition that says power has limits, and those limits are knowable. That's why his influence shows up everywhere in early American legal thinking, from courtrooms to state constitutions and the national founding debates. He also offered an implicit warning. If you break legal continuity, you don't get pure freedom, you get discretion, rule by whoever controls the moment, dressed up as necessity. And once necessity becomes the argument, the limits disappear. This is where Burke's caution snaps into focus. Beware the reformer who promises liberation by tearing down restraint. Blackstone shows what restraint was protecting: equal rules, stable expectations, and defenses the weak can actually use. The founders took the inheritance and refined it. They didn't just praise rights. They wrote limits into a constitution, then demanded those limits be enforceable, not merely ceremonial. They built courts, insisted on due process, and treated juries as a citizen's firewall against government overreach. Even the founding grievances make more sense in this light. Complaints about broken process, coerced justice, and rights treated as optional. They added explicit protections because they knew something timeless. A right that can't be defended is just poetry. Blackstone helps us separate ideas we still confuse. Powerful government is not the same as lawful government, and popular government is not the same as limited government. Law is what turns consent into restraint, and restraint is what turns politics into liberty. The guardrails are the point. Blackstone's legacy isn't that he got every detail perfect, or that his age had no contradictions. His legacy is that he treated liberty as something you build, explain, and maintain, especially when passions run hot. Guardrails matter most when you're tempted to ignore them, when you're sure your side is right, and shortcuts feel worth it. So here's the question for our time. Do we still defend due process, equal justice, and limits on power when it's inconvenient for our side? Or do we trade them away and hope power gets used for the right reasons this time? The American founding didn't start with slogans. It started with a hard-earned belief that law must stand above rulers. And the comeback starts the same way, when we demand the rules bind everyone, especially the people who want to rule us. The fight for liberty never ends. It only changes hands.